The October wind cut through the narrow streets of South Boston, with a biting chill that seemed to seep through the old brick buildings and worn window frames. Emily Carter stood at her kitchen sink, washing the dinner dishes while watching the streetlights flicker to life one by one, through the small window above the faucet. At 27, she'd learned to find comfort in these small mundane routines, the warm water on her hands, the clinking of plates, the distant sound of her son's laughter from the bedroom. "Mommy, come see." Noah's voice rang out, bright and innocent, cutting through her thoughts. Emily dried her hands on a faded dish towel and smiled despite the weight pressing on her shoulders. The stack of bills on the counter seemed to grow taller each week, and the letter from the landlord about overdue rent sat unopened near the coffee maker. But for now, for this moment, she could be just a mother responding to her son's call. She walked down the narrow hallway of their modest two-bedroom apartment, her footsteps soft on the worn carpet. The walls were decorated with Noah's crayon drawings, colorful scenes of stick figures holding hands under bright yellow suns. Each one was a small reminder of why she kept pushing forward, why she worked double shifts at the diner, why she'd do anything to keep their small world intact. "Look, Mommy." Noah sat cross-legged on his bed, his dark hair falling into his eyes as he held up a completed puzzle. At 5 years old, he had an intensity in his gaze that sometimes caught Emily off guard, a seriousness that seemed beyond his years, especially when he concentrated on something. "That's amazing, sweetheart." Emily sat beside him, pulling him into a gentle hug. He smelled like the lavender soap from his bath and the apple juice he'd had with dinner. "You're getting so good at these puzzles. Can we do a bigger one tomorrow?" Noah asked, his green eyes, so striking, so familiar, looking up at her hopefully. "We'll see, baby. Now it's bedtime. School tomorrow, remember?" Noah's face scrunched up in that way children do when they want to negotiate. "5 more minutes? Nice try." Emily tickled his side gently, drawing out giggles that filled the small room with warmth. "Brush your teeth, and I'll read you a story." As Noah padded off to the bathroom, Emily straightened his bed sheets and picked up the scattered puzzle pieces, placing them carefully back in their box. Through the thin walls, she could hear Mrs. Chen next door watching her evening television program, the familiar theme song of a game show providing a mundane soundtrack to the evening. This was her life now. Small, simple, safe. So different from the chaos she'd escaped 2 years ago when she finally found the courage to leave David. Her ex-husband had been a storm of broken promises and reckless decisions, leaving destruction in his wake before disappearing entirely. The divorce papers had been finalized 8 months ago, and Emily had hoped, prayed, that she could finally close that chapter of her life. She should have known better. Noah emerged from the bathroom with his dinosaur pajamas on, toothpaste still dotting the corner of his mouth. Emily wiped it away with her thumb and guided him to bed, tucking the blanket around him with practiced care. "Which story tonight?" she asked, gesturing to the small shelf of worn books beside his bed. "The one about the brave knight," Noah said, snuggling into his pillow. Emily reached for the book, but before she could open it, a sound made her freeze. 3 heavy knocks on the front door. Not the polite tap of a neighbor, not the quick rhythm of a delivery person. These were deliberate, commanding, the kind of knock that demanded attention. Emily's heart began to race. She glanced at the small clock on Noah's nightstand. 8:47 p.m. Too late for anyone she knew. "Mommy?" Noah's voice was small, uncertain. "It's okay, baby. Stay here." Emily forced her voice to remain calm even as her hands began to tremble slightly. She stood and walked to the doorway, pulling Noah's door partially closed behind her. The knocking came again, louder this time. 3 measured strikes that seemed to reverberate through the apartment. Emily moved down the hallway, her mouth dry. Through the peephole, she could see 2 figures standing in the dimly lit corridor. Both wore dark coats. Both stood with the kind of stillness that suggested patience backed by certainty. "Who is it?" Emily called out, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mrs. Carter." The voice that answered was deep, measured, and carried an authority that made Emily's stomach drop. "We need to talk about your husband's outstanding obligations. David." Of course it was about David. "I'm divorced," Emily said, her hand gripping the doorframe for support. "Whatever he owes, it's not my responsibility." A pause. Then, "Legal documents don't change what's owed. Open the door, Mrs. Carter. This can be a conversation, or it can be more complicated. Your choice." Emily's mind raced. She thought about calling the police, but something in the man's tone suggested that wouldn't help. People like this, Collectors, enforcers, whatever they were, they operated in spaces where normal rules didn't always apply. Her phone was in the kitchen. Noah was in his bedroom. She was trapped between protecting her son and facing whatever was on the other side of that door. With shaking hands, Emily unlocked the deadbolt and opened the door just a few inches, keeping the chain lock engaged. The man standing directly in front of her door was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that filled out his dark wool coat. But it was his face that made Emily's breath catch. Sharp features, dark hair styled back, and eyes that were almost gray in the hallway's fluorescent lighting. Eyes that held no warmth, no mercy, just a cold calculation that sent ice down her spine. Behind him stood another man, shorter, but built like someone who spent hours in a gym, his hands clasped in front of him in a posture that was both casual and alert. "Mrs. Carter," the tall man said, and something in his voice triggered a memory Emily couldn't quite place. "My name is Michael Donovan. I believe your former husband made some promises he didn't keep." Michael Donovan. The name meant nothing to Emily, but the way he said it, like he expected her to recognize it, suggested it should. "I don't know anything about David's business," Emily said, trying to keep her voice steady. "He left us 2 years ago. I haven't heard from him since the divorce was finalized. That's unfortunate for you." Michael's expression didn't change. "Because the debt is $50,000 and someone needs to make it right." $50,000. The number hit Emily like a physical blow. She could barely afford groceries. She was behind on rent. 50,000 might as well have been 50 million. "I don't have that kind of money," Emily said, and she hated how desperate she sounded. "I work at a diner. I'm raising my son alone. Please, you have to understand." "What I understand," Michael interrupted, his tone still maddeningly calm, "is that David Carter took something that belonged to me, made promises about repayment, and then disappeared. You're the only connection I have to him." "The chain, Mrs. Carter." The second man spoke for the first time, his voice rougher, more impatient. "Take it off." "I can't let you in," Emily said, even though she knew how pointless the thin chain lock was. "Please. There has to be another way." Michael tilted his head slightly, studying her through the gap in the door. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Not sympathy exactly, but perhaps a recognition of her fear. "Here's what's going to happen," Michael said. "You're going to let us in. We're going to have a civilized conversation about how this debt gets resolved. No one needs to make this harder than it has to be." The unspoken threat hung in the air between them. Emily thought about Noah, probably listening from his bedroom, confused and scared. She thought about the neighbors who knew better than to get involved in other people's business. She thought about how alone she really was in this moment. Slowly, with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, Emily closed the door enough to slide the chain off, then opened it wider. Michael stepped inside first, his movements controlled and precise. He was even more imposing in the confines of her small entryway, his presence seeming to fill the space. The second man followed, closing the door behind them with a soft click that sounded final. Emily backed up instinctively, putting distance between herself and these intruders in her home. Michael's eyes swept over the apartment, taking in the modest furniture, the bills on the kitchen counter, the child's drawings on the walls. "Living room," Michael said, more command than suggestion, and moved in that direction without waiting for Emily's response. Emily followed, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Michael sat down on her worn couch with the ease of someone who owned the space, while the second man remained standing near the doorway, effectively blocking any quick exit. "Sit," Michael gestured to the chair across from him. Emily sat, perching on the edge of the cushion, ready to bolt if necessary. Up close under the lamp's warm light, she could see Michael more clearly. He couldn't have been much older than her, mid-30s perhaps. His clothes were expensive, tailored in a way that spoke of wealth. A silver watch caught the light on his wrist. Everything about him screamed power and control. $50,000, Michael repeated, leaning back slightly. "David borrowed it 6 months ago. Said he had an investment opportunity. Promised a return within 90 days. He never mentioned any of this to me," Emily said, clasping her hands together to keep them from trembling visibly. "By that time, we were already separated. She stopped, not wanting to share her personal shame with this stranger. "He what?" Michael prompted, his gray eyes fixed on her face. "He had a problem," Emily said carefully, choosing her words. "He made bad decisions with money, with everything really. That's why I left." "Smart," Michael said, and there was no sarcasm in his tone. Unfortunately, smart doesn't erase the debt. I'll pay it back, Emily heard herself say, even though she had no idea how. I just need time. I can make payments. $50,000 at your diner wages? The second man spoke up, his tone dismissive. You'd be paying until your kid's in college. The mention of Noah made Emily's maternal instincts flare. My son has nothing to do with this. No one's saying he does, Michael said, but his eyes had sharpened with interest. You have a son? Emily immediately regretted revealing even that much. He's 5. He's asleep. Please, whatever this is, keep him out of it. Michael nodded slowly, as if filing this information away. David never mentioned a child. David never mentioned a lot of things. The bitterness in Emily's voice surprised even her, including $50,000 debts. For the first time, something almost like amusement crossed Michael's face. You really didn't know. No, I really didn't. Emily leaned forward slightly, desperate to make him understand. Look, I know you don't have any reason to believe me, but I'm telling you the truth. I don't know where David is. I don't have access to any of his money, if he even has any. I'm working 2 jobs just to keep a roof over our heads. Please, there has to be someone else you can go to. There isn't. Michael's brief moment of almost humor vanished, replaced by that cold calculation again. David made sure of that. No family, no friends willing to vouch for him, no assets I can locate. You're it. Then you're out of luck, Emily said, and immediately wondered if honesty was the wrong strategy here. Because I can't give you what I don't have. The silence that followed was heavy with tension. The second man shifted his weight, and Emily caught the movement from the corner of her eye. Michael remained perfectly still, studying her with an intensity that made her want to look away but couldn't. There are other ways to settle debts, Michael finally said, and Emily's stomach twisted with dread at the implications. I'm not, she started, but Michael raised a hand. I'm not that kind of businessman, Mrs. Carter. I don't deal in those terms. His voice had taken on an edge of offense, as if she'd insulted him. What I mean is, David had skills, connections, access to certain channels. If you inherited any of that information, any contacts, anything that could lead me to assets or opportunities, we could work something out. I inherited nothing but his debts, apparently, Emily said. I don't know who he worked with, what he did, where he kept anything. When I filed for divorce, he cleared out any shared accounts. I got custody of Noah and a stack of bills. That's it. Michael studied her face for a long moment, and Emily had the unsettling feeling that he could see straight through to whether she was lying or not. Finally, he seemed to come to a conclusion. That's a problem, he said quietly. Before Emily could respond, a small voice called out from down the hallway. Mommy! Every muscle in Emily's body went rigid. No, not now. Please, not now. Stay in your room, baby, Emily called back, starting to stand. But it was too late. The sound of small feet padding down the hallway preceded Noah's appearance in the doorway to the living room. He stood there in his dinosaur pajamas, clutching his stuffed elephant, his dark hair messy from having been in bed. His green eyes, so striking, so unusual, landed on Michael, and everything stopped. Michael's entire body had gone still, his expression frozen mid-thought. He stared at Noah with an intensity that Emily couldn't interpret. Shock? Recognition? Something else entirely? Noah, for his part, tilted his head and studied the strange man sitting on their couch with the fearless curiosity of a child. Then, inexplicably, his small face broke into a smile. Dad? The word came out soft, uncertain, but clear. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Emily's heart stopped beating. The second man muttered something under his breath. And Michael. Michael looked like he'd been struck. Noah, no. Emily moved toward her son, but she couldn't seem to make her legs work properly. He's not. But Noah was already moving forward, drawn by something Emily couldn't understand. He walked right up to Michael, still clutching his stuffed elephant, and looked up at him with those devastating green eyes. Are you my dad? Noah asked again, his voice filled with a hope that broke Emily's heart. Michael's face had gone pale. His eyes moved from Noah to Emily and back again, and Emily watched as something clicked in his mind, some connection being made that she could see happening in real time. The green eyes, the shape of the face, the dark hair, the set of the jaw even at 5 years old. Emily. Michael's voice came out rough, barely above a whisper. How old is he? That's none of your business, Emily managed to say, finally finding her voice. She crossed the room and put her hands on Noah's shoulders, trying to pull him back. "Noah, go to your room, now." "But Mommy." "Now, Noah." The sharp tone made Noah flinch, and immediately Emily felt terrible, but fear was overriding everything else. This couldn't be happening. Not like this, not now. Noah's eyes filled with confused tears and he ran back down the hallway. A moment later, his door slammed shut. The silence in the living room was deafening. Michael stood slowly, his movements careful, controlled. But Emily could see the tension in every line of his body, the way his hands had curled into fists at his sides. "How old is he?" Michael repeated, and this time there was steel in his voice. Emily's mind raced, trying to figure out how to handle this, how to protect Noah, how to make this nightmare stop. But there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide from the truth that was written all over her son's face. "5," she whispered. "He's 5 years old." Michael's jaw clenched. "And his father?" "Is gone. Has been for years." Emily lifted her chin, trying to find some courage. "And it needs to stay that way. 6 years ago." Michael's voice was quiet, but there was a dangerous edge to it now. "The Bennett Hotel, that charity fundraiser your firm organized." Emily felt the blood drain from her face. He remembered. Of course he remembered. How could she have been so stupid to think he wouldn't put it together? "You left," Emily said, her voice trembling. "The next morning you were just gone. I had a family emergency." Michael took a step toward her, and Emily forced herself not to back away. "I tried to find you afterward, but you'd changed numbers, moved." "I was pregnant," Emily said, and she was surprised by the anger that suddenly flooded through her, burning away some of the fear. "And you were gone. No note, no explanation, no way to reach you. What was I supposed to do?" "Tell me." Michael's voice rose, and the second man by the door straightened, alert. "You were supposed to tell me I had a son." "Tell you what? Tell you where?" Emily shot back. "I didn't know your last name. I didn't know where you lived. All I knew was your first name and that you disappeared from my life as quickly as you'd entered it. And then I started hearing things. Whispers, rumors about the kind of business you were in. I made a choice. I chose to keep Noah safe. Safe from me. It wasn't a question. Safe from all of this." Emily gestured around helplessly. "From men showing up at my door demanding money. From whatever world you live in that makes people afraid of your name. Yes, Michael, safe from you." The words hung between them, brutal and honest. Michael's expression cycled through emotions too quickly for Emily to track. Anger, hurt, understanding, something that might have been grief. "He's my son," Michael finally said, and his voice had gone quiet again. "That boy in there is my son." "Biologically, maybe," Emily said, even though she knew how weak that argument was. "But you've never been his father. You didn't know he existed until 3 minutes ago. Because you kept him from me. To protect him. From what? From having a father? From having someone who could give him more than—" Michael gestured around the modest apartment. "Than this." The insult, intentional or not, stung. Emily felt tears burning in her eyes but refused to let them fall. From having a father who collects debts by intimidating single mothers in their homes at night. From having a father whose name makes people scared. From having a father who might end up behind bars or worse, leaving him alone and confused about why his dad never came home. I chose to protect him from all of that." Michael stared at her, and for the first time since he'd walked through her door, Emily saw actual emotion crack through his controlled exterior. Pain, regret, anger that seemed directed inward as much as at her. "Vincent," Michael said quietly, not taking his eyes off Emily. "Wait in the car." The second man, Vincent, hesitated. "Boss, are you sure?" "Now." Vincent nodded once and left the apartment, closing the door quietly behind him. The click of the latch seemed impossibly loud in the silence that followed. Emily and Michael stood there, facing each other across the small living room that suddenly felt too intimate, too small for the weight of what lay between them. "I need to see him," Michael finally said. "No. Emily, no," she repeated, more firmly this time. "You don't get to walk in here demanding money 1 minute and then claim parental rights the next. This isn't how this works." "Then tell me how it works," Michael said, and there was a desperate edge to his voice now. "Because I just found out I have a 5-year-old son, and everything I thought I knew about my life has changed in the last 5 minutes." Emily wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling cold despite the apartment's warmth. "The debt," she said quietly. "What happens with the debt now?" Michael was quiet for a long moment. "Forgiven. Just like that. Just like that." He ran a hand through his hair, the first gesture of uncertainty Emily had seen from him. Money is just money, Emily. But that boy down the hall, he stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. He's my son. He doesn't know you, Emily said. He doesn't know anything about who you are, or what you do. Then let me change that. Let me... Michael paused, then tried again. Let me be his father. It's not that simple. Why not? Because. Emily's voice cracked and she could feel her carefully maintained control starting to crumble. Because 5-year-olds ask questions. They want to know where you work, what you do, why you can't come to their school plays or birthday parties. Because I've spent 5 years building a life where Noah feels safe and stable, and I won't let that fall apart just because I showed up, Michael finished. Emily nodded, not trusting her voice anymore. Michael walked slowly to the window, looking out at the street below. The streetlights cast shadows across his face, making him look older, wearier. I'm not the monster you think I am, he said quietly. I never said you were a monster. You didn't have to. He turned back to face her. The way you look at me, the fear in your voice when you talk about keeping Noah safe from my world. You think I'm a threat to him, aren't you? Emily asked, too exhausted to be anything but blunt. You showed up here to collect a debt through intimidation. What am I supposed to think? That I'm a businessman who operates in complicated spaces, Michael said. That I make hard decisions in a world that doesn't always follow the rules you're used to. But I have a code, Emily. Lines I don't cross. And children, he stopped, his jaw working. Children are always off limits. Always. Emily wanted to believe him. Or maybe she was just so tired of being afraid of fighting alone, that the idea of someone else sharing the burden was too tempting to resist. He asked about you, Emily said softly. When he was 3, he started asking where his daddy was. I told him you went away before he was born, that you didn't know about him. What did he say? He asked if it was his fault you left. Emily's voice broke on the words, and this time she couldn't stop the tears. He asked if maybe you would have stayed if you knew about him, if he'd been good enough. Michael's hands clenched at his sides again, and Emily saw something that might have been rage flash across his face, but not rage at her. Rage at the situation, at the years lost, at the idea of his son feeling unwanted. I need to talk to him, Michael said. Not tonight. Emily wiped at her eyes roughly. He's confused enough. Tomorrow. She stopped, unsure what she was even offering. Tomorrow I come back, Michael finished for her. During the day, normal hours. We talk, the 3 of us. Just talk, Emily emphasized. Just talk, Michael agreed. Then, more quietly, I know I don't have the right to ask this, but does he have a good life? Is he happy? The question, so sincere and vulnerable, caught Emily off guard. She thought about Noah's bright laughter, his curiosity about everything, the way he gave her drawings to cheer her up when she seemed sad. Yes, she said honestly. He's a really good kid, Michael. Kind and smart and so full of life. He's everything good in my world. Something in Michael's expression softened. Then you did it right. Whatever choices you made, however hard it was, you did it right. The acknowledgement shouldn't have meant so much, but it did. Emily had spent 5 years second-guessing every decision, wondering if she was enough, if Noah would resent her someday for the father he never knew. 2 o'clock tomorrow, Emily said. He gets home from kindergarten at 1:30. That gives me time to talk to him first, to prepare him. I'll be here. Michael moved toward the door, then paused. Emily? She looked up at him. I'm sorry, he said simply, for all of this, for how it happened, for the years I missed, for walking through that door tonight demanding money without having any idea what I'd really find. Emily nodded, not knowing what to say to that. Michael opened the door, then looked back one more time. He really looks like me, doesn't he? Despite everything, Emily almost smiled. Yeah, he really does. After Michael left, Emily stood in her living room for a long moment, trying to process what had just happened. Her entire world had shifted on its axis. The threat of debt was gone, but in its place was something far more complicated. Slowly, she walked down the hallway to Noah's room and opened the door quietly. He was lying in bed, his stuffed elephant clutched tight, his eyes red from crying. Mommy? His voice was so small. Emily sat on the edge of his bed and gathered him into her arms. I'm here, baby. I'm sorry I yelled. Was that really my dad? Noah asked against her shoulder. Emily took a deep breath. There was no more hiding, no more protecting him from the truth. That ship had sailed the moment Noah walked into the living room and saw Michael's face. Yes, she said softly. That was your dad. Is he coming back? Tomorrow. He's coming back tomorrow so we can all talk. Noah pulled back to look at her face, his green eyes, Michael's eyes, searching hers. Are you mad at him? It's complicated, sweetheart. Because he went away? Yeah, because he went away, but Emily smoothed his hair back from his forehead. Maybe sometimes people can come back. Maybe sometimes we get second chances. Noah seemed to consider this seriously, his small face thoughtful. I'm scared. Me too, baby, Emily admitted. But we'll figure it out together, okay? We always do. Will you keep me safe? The question broke her heart. Always. No matter what. That's my job, and I'm very good at my job. Noah managed a small smile at that, and Emily held him until his breathing evened out and he fell asleep against her shoulder. Long after she'd tucked him back in and returned to her own room, Emily lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about green eyes and impossible choices, and the way Michael had looked at Noah like his entire world had just been rewritten. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new conversations, new complications. But tonight, in this moment, Noah was safe. Noah was sleeping peacefully. Noah was still hers. Whatever tomorrow brought, she'd face it. She'd survived David's chaos. She'd survived single parenthood and poverty and fear. She could survive this too. She had to. For Noah. Always for Noah. Emily barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Michael's face. The shock, the realization, the raw emotion that had cracked through his carefully controlled exterior when Noah called him Dad. She'd replayed the conversation 100 times in her mind, analyzing every word, every gesture, trying to predict what tomorrow would bring. At 6 a.m., she gave up on sleep entirely and made coffee in her small kitchen, watching the sunrise paint the Boston skyline in shades of orange and pink. The city was just beginning to wake up. Delivery trucks rumbling down the street, early commuters hurrying to catch trains, the bakery on the corner turning on its lights. Normal. Everything looked so beautifully, deceptively normal. Noah woke up at 7, unusually quiet as he ate his breakfast. He kept glancing at Emily with those perceptive green eyes, clearly wanting to ask questions but holding back. She'd always marveled at how intuitive he was, how he seemed to sense when she was stressed or worried. Mommy? He finally ventured as she packed his lunch. Is my dad really coming today? Emily set down the sandwich she was making and knelt beside his chair, taking his small hands in hers. Yes, sweetheart. This afternoon after school. What's he like? Noah's voice was small, vulnerable in a way that made Emily's chest tight. I don't know anymore. Emily answered honestly. I knew him a long time ago before you were born. But people change. We'll learn together, okay? Noah nodded slowly, processing this. What if he doesn't like me? Oh, baby. Emily pulled him into a hug, breathing in the scent of his strawberry shampoo. That's impossible. You're the most lovable kid in the entire world. Trust me on that. She felt Noah relax slightly in her arms, and she held him a moment longer before pulling back. Now eat up. Mrs. Rodriguez doesn't like it when you're late for kindergarten. The morning routine provided a welcome distraction, getting Noah dressed, walking him to school 3 blocks away, chatting with the other parents at drop-off. For a few hours, Emily could almost pretend everything was normal. Almost. But then she returned to the empty apartment, and reality crashed back in. She had 6 hours before Noah got home, 6 hours before Michael arrived, 6 hours to figure out what to say, how to handle this, how to protect her son while allowing him to know his father. Emily spent the morning cleaning compulsively, scrubbing counters that were already clean, organizing closets that didn't need organizing, anything to keep her hands busy and her mind from spiraling. By noon, the apartment was spotless, and she was running out of distractions. She made herself a sandwich she couldn't eat, then finally sat down at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, staring at her phone. She should call someone, her mother, her best friend Sarah, anyone who could offer advice or support. But how did you explain this situation? Hey, remember that one-night encounter 6 years ago that resulted in Noah? Well, the guy showed up last night to collect a debt, discovered he has a son, and is coming back this afternoon to, what? Be a father? Turn our lives upside down? I honestly don't know. The whole thing sounded like a bad movie plot. Emily's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I know 2 p.m. was the plan, but could I come earlier? Just for a few minutes? I need to understand everything before I meet him properly. Michael. She stared at the message for a long moment. Part of her wanted to say no, to maintain the boundary she'd set. But another part, The part that remembered the vulnerability in Michael's voice when he'd asked if Noah was happy. Understood what he was asking. 1 p.m. But Noah gets home at 1:30, so we don't have long. His response came immediately. Thank you. Emily set her phone down and pressed her palms against her eyes. This was really happening. After 6 years of raising Noah alone, of being both mother and father, of making every decision and facing every challenge solo, now she was going to have to share, to explain, to let someone else into the carefully constructed world she'd built for her son. The knock on her door came at exactly 1:00 p.m. Emily opened it to find Michael standing there, looking markedly different from the night before. Gone was the intimidating presence in the expensive coat and sharp suit. Today he wore dark jeans and a simple gray sweater, his hair slightly less perfectly styled. He looked younger, more uncertain, more human. "Hi," he said, and there was a hesitation in his voice that hadn't been there last night. "Come in." Emily stepped back, and Michael entered, his eyes immediately going to Noah's drawings on the walls, the same ones he'd barely glanced at last night when he was here on business. "He's talented," Michael said, pausing in front of a picture of a superhero with a cape. "He loves to draw, and build things, and ask about 1,000,000 questions a day." Emily closed the door and gestured toward the kitchen. "Coffee? Please." They moved into the kitchen with an awkward formality, like strangers trying to navigate unfamiliar social protocols. Emily poured 2 cups of coffee and sat across from Michael at her small table, the same table where she'd helped Noah with his alphabet last night, where they ate meals together, where so much of their life played out in small, ordinary moments. Now Michael sat there, this person from her past, this stranger who was somehow the father of her child, and the surrealism of it was almost overwhelming. "I didn't sleep last night," Michael said, wrapping his hands around the coffee mug. "I kept thinking about everything, about that night 6 years ago, about how I left, about all the time I've missed." "Join the club," Emily said, attempting a weak smile. "I've been running on adrenaline since you walked out of here last night." Michael looked at her directly then, and in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the kitchen window, his eyes were more green than gray, so much like Noah's. "Tell me everything, from the beginning, please." Emily took a sip of her coffee, buying herself a moment to organize her thoughts. Where did she even start? "The Bennett Hotel," she finally said. "October 2019. My firm was organizing that charity gala for the Children's Hospital. I was just a junior event coordinator back then, running around making sure everything was perfect." Flashback begins. The ballroom of the Bennett Hotel glittered with crystal chandeliers and elegant decorations. Emily, then 21 and fresh out of college, wore a simple black dress and carried a clipboard, orchestrating the evening's flow with the nervous energy of someone determined to prove herself. She was checking on the catering when she literally collided with someone coming around a corner, papers flying, her clipboard clattering to the marble floor. "I'm so sorry," she gasped, dropping to her knees to gather the scattered papers. "My fault entirely." A deep voice, and then a hand appeared in her field of vision, helping collect the papers. "I wasn't watching where I was going." Emily looked up and found herself staring into striking gray-green eyes set in a handsome face. The man was in his late 20s wearing an impeccably tailored tuxedo, and when he smiled at her, something in her chest did an unexpected flip. "Thank you," she managed, accepting the papers he'd gathered. "Are you here for the gala?" "Business obligation," he said, helping her to her feet. "My family donated. I'm representing them." "Well, I hope you enjoy the evening." Emily tried to sound professional, but she was acutely aware of how his hand had lingered on her elbow when helping her up. "I'm Michael, by the way." "Emily." She shook his offered hand, noting the firm grip, the warmth of his palm against hers. "Emily." He said her name like he was testing how it felt. "Are you running this whole event?" "Me? No, I'm helping, making sure everything runs smoothly." "Then you're the most important person here," Michael said with a slight smile. "Everyone else is just showing up. You're making it actually happen." The compliment, so genuine and unexpected, made Emily blush. "I should get back to work." "Of course. Maybe I'll see you later." Maybe. But there was no maybe about it. Throughout the evening, Emily was aware of Michael's presence in the ballroom. She'd catch glimpses of him talking to donors, laughing at someone's joke, moving through the crowd with an easy confidence. And every time she looked, it seemed like he was looking back. It was late in the evening, after most guests had left and the cleanup crew was starting their work, when Emily finally took a break. She stepped out onto one of the hotel's balconies, breathing in the cool October air, her feet aching in her heels. Hiding? She turned to find Michael standing in the doorway, his bow tie undone, looking slightly rumpled and much more relaxed than he had earlier. "Taking 5 minutes before I help pack up," Emily said. "Did you enjoy the event?" "I did, actually, more than I expected to." He moved to stand beside her at the railing, looking out over the city lights. "You did an amazing job. Everything was perfect. We had a good team." "Don't do that." Michael turned to face her. "Don't minimize what you accomplished. Take the compliment, Emily." She smiled despite herself. "Okay, thank you. I'm glad it went well." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, and Emily was struck by how natural it felt to be standing there with this man she'd just met. Usually she was nervous around strangers, especially attractive strangers, but something about Michael put her at ease. "Can I buy you a drink?" Michael asked. The hotel bar should still be open. Emily knew she should say no. She had work to finish, and mixing business with whatever this was wasn't professional. But when she looked at Michael, saw the genuine interest in his eyes, the words that came out were, "I'd like that." 1 drink turned into 3. 3 drinks turned into hours of conversation that flowed so easily it felt like talking to an old friend. Michael was intelligent, funny, and surprisingly open about his life, or at least the parts he chose to share. He talked about growing up in Boston, about the pressure of family expectations, about trying to carve out his own path. Emily shared her own story, growing up in a small town in New Hampshire, moving to Boston for college, her dreams of eventually starting her own event planning company. "You will," Michael said with such certainty that Emily almost believed him. "How do you know?" "Because you have that look, the one that says you don't give up easily, that you make things happen." It was close to 2 a.m. when Emily realized how late it had gotten. "I should go. Early meeting tomorrow. I'll walk you to your car." "I took the subway." "At this hour? Let me call you a car." They stood outside the hotel waiting for the car service, the October wind picking up, and Emily shivered slightly. Without a word, Michael shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. It smelled like expensive cologne and something uniquely him. "Michael, you'll freeze. I'll survive." His smile was warm in the streetlight. The car pulled up and Emily knew this was the moment to say goodbye, to let this magical evening end like it should. But when she looked at Michael, she found herself not wanting it to end. "Do you want to come back to my place?" The words came out before she could second-guess them. "Just for coffee. Real coffee, I mean. I live close by." Michael's eyes searched hers, and she could see him weighing the decision. "Are you sure?" No, she wasn't sure. This wasn't like her at all. But something about tonight, about him, made her want to be brave. "I'm sure." They made it to her apartment, a tiny studio in Alston that she could barely afford. They made it through the door, and then the coffee was forgotten entirely as Michael pulled her close and kissed her with a passion that made her knees weak. What followed was a night of intensity and connection that Emily had never experienced before. It wasn't just physical, though that was incredible. It was the way Michael looked at her like she was the only person in the world, the way he whispered her name, the way he held her afterward, neither of them speaking, just existing in that perfect bubble of intimacy. "Stay," Emily murmured against his chest as the sky outside began to lighten toward dawn. "For breakfast." "Stay." "I will," Michael promised, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I'm not going anywhere." But when Emily woke up at 8 a.m., the other side of her bed was cold and empty. Michael was gone. No note, no explanation, just his absence and the faint scent of his cologne lingering on the pillow. Flashback ends. "I called you," Emily said quietly, bringing them back to her kitchen, to the present. "I tried your number for 3 days straight. It went straight to voicemail every time. I had to leave the country," Michael said, his voice tight. "Family emergency. My phone got destroyed in the chaos and I lost all my contacts. By the time I got back to Boston 2 weeks later, I tried to track you down, but you'd already moved. Your event company said you'd left. I went to your apartment, the one in Alston, but someone else was living there." Emily's hands tightened around her coffee mug. "I couldn't afford that place anymore. Had to find something cheaper, and I quit the event company when I started showing. Morning sickness was brutal. You were alone. It wasn't a question. My mom helped when she could, but she lives in New Hampshire, and I had Sarah, my best friend. But yeah, mostly I was alone." Emily met his eyes. 2 months after you disappeared, I took a pregnancy test. Positive. I tried calling you again, but the number was disconnected. I had no last name, no way to find you. So I made a choice. To keep him from me. To keep him safe, Emily corrected firmly. Michael, I didn't know you. One night, however amazing, doesn't tell you who someone really is. And then I started hearing your name around the city. Whispers. Warnings. People who knew you. I put the pieces together about what you did, what your family was involved in. Michael's jaw tightened. So you assumed the worst. I assumed the truth, Emily said. And I made a choice based on what was best for my baby. For Noah. Can you honestly tell me you would have wanted a child mixed up in your world? That you would have wanted to raise a son surrounded by danger and uncertainty? I would have wanted the choice, Michael said, his voice rough with emotion. I would have wanted to know he existed. To be there for his birth, his first steps, his first words. All of it, Emily. You took all of that from me. And I'd do it again. Emily's voice was steady despite the tears threatening to fall. Because my job, my only job, is to protect my son. And 6 years ago that meant protecting him from a world I didn't understand and a father who'd already disappeared once. The silence that followed was heavy with hurt and anger and regret. Michael stood abruptly, walking to the window, his back to her, shoulders tense. What was his first word? Michael asked quietly. Mama. Emily's voice softened. At 10 months. He said it about 100 times a day after that. When did he start walking? 13 months. He took 3 steps and fell on his diaper. He thought it was hilarious. Michael turned back to face her, and Emily saw the pain etched in his features. Tell me everything. I know I don't deserve it, but please, help me understand who he is. And so Emily did. She told him about Noah's love for dinosaurs and space, about how he insisted on wearing his superhero cape to the grocery store for 6 months straight, about his first day of kindergarten when he'd been so brave despite being terrified, about how he gave half his Halloween candy to the elderly man who lived downstairs because Mr. Peterson looks sad, Mommy. She told him about the hard parts too, the fevers that scared her half to death, the time Noah broke his arm falling off a swing, the questions about his father that got more frequent as he got older. He asked me once if you were a superhero, Emily said with a sad smile. If that's why you had to go away. He said maybe you were protecting people and couldn't come home. I didn't know what to say to that. Michael's hands clenched at his sides. He sounds incredible. He is. Emily checked the clock on the microwave. 1:25 p.m. He'll be home in 5 minutes. Michael visibly tensed. What do I say to him? I don't know, Emily admitted. I've never done this before either. They heard the sound of small footsteps on the stairs outside, then Noah's voice saying goodbye to Mrs. Rodriguez, who'd walked him home. Emily stood, smoothing her hands over her jeans nervously, and Michael did the same. The door opened, and Noah came in, his superhero backpack bouncing on his shoulders. He froze when he saw Michael standing in the kitchen. Hi, Noah said quietly, suddenly shy in a way he rarely was. Hi, Noah. Michael's voice was gentle, careful. Your mom said I could come visit. Noah looked at Emily for confirmation, and she nodded encouragingly. Why don't you put your backpack away, and then we can all sit down and talk. Noah nodded and disappeared down the hallway. The moment he was gone, Michael let out a breath he'd been holding. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Just be honest, Emily said. Kids are pretty resilient, and Noah's been wanting to meet you for a long time. Noah returned quickly, having changed out of his school clothes into his favorite dinosaur t-shirt. He climbed onto the couch, sitting cross-legged, his green eyes watching Michael with open curiosity. Emily and Michael sat in the chairs across from him, and for a moment, no one spoke. So, Noah finally said, his voice small but brave, Are you my dad? Yes, Michael said simply. I am. Where have you been? The question, so innocent and yet so loaded, made Emily's heart ache. Michael leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, meeting Noah's eyes directly. I didn't know about you, Michael said honestly. Your mom and I met a long time ago, before you were born, and then I had to go away for work, and we lost touch. I didn't know you existed until last night. Noah processed this seriously. But you know now? I know now, and I'm here because I want to get to know you, if that's okay with you. What kind of work do you do? Noah asked. Emily tensed, waiting to see how Michael would handle this. They'd need to establish boundaries, figure out what Noah could and couldn't know about Michael's business. I run a company, Michael said, which was technically true. It's complicated business stuff that's probably boring to talk about, but I'd rather hear about you. What did you do at school today? The deflection worked. Noah launched into an enthusiastic description of the art project they'd done, painting fall leaves, and how his friend Marcus had gotten paint in his hair. As he talked, his initial shyness began to fade, replaced by his natural exuberance. Michael listened intently, asking questions, laughing at the right moments, and Emily watched the interaction with a complex mix of emotions. She could see the resemblance so clearly now, not just the physical features but the way they both tilted their heads when concentrating, the way Noah's expressions sometimes mirrored Michael's. "Do you like dinosaurs?" Noah asked suddenly. "I love dinosaurs. My favorite is the Triceratops because it has 3 horns and it could defend itself, but it wasn't mean. It just ate plants. I like the T-Rex," Michael said, "but I like your reasoning about the Triceratops. Smart choice." Noah beamed at the approval, and Emily felt a pang in her chest. Her son was starved for male attention, for a father figure, and seeing how he responded to Michael's smallest bits of validation made her realize how much he'd been missing. "Can I show you my dinosaur collection?" Noah asked eagerly. Michael glanced at Emily, who nodded. "Sure, buddy." Noah grabbed Michael's hand unself-consciously and pulled him down the hallway to his bedroom. Emily followed more slowly, leaning against the doorframe as Noah pulled out his plastic dinosaur bins and began showing Michael each one, providing detailed explanations about their names and characteristics. Michael sat on the floor, his expensive clothes forgotten, giving Noah his complete attention. He asked questions that showed genuine interest, not just adult politeness, and Noah responded by opening up even more. This was the part Emily had feared most, that Noah would immediately attach himself to Michael, desperate for the father he'd always wanted, and it was happening right before her eyes. After about 20 minutes, Emily gently intervened. "Noah, honey, Michael probably has to go soon, and you have homework. But I wanted to show him my space book too," Noah protested. "Maybe next time," Michael said, standing up. "If it's okay with your mom, I'd like to visit again. Soon." Noah's face lit up. "Really? Tomorrow?" "We'll see," Emily said quickly. "Michael has to work, and so do I." Michael followed her back to the living room while Noah reluctantly pulled out his homework. At the door, he paused. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for letting me meet him. He stopped, emotion thick in his voice. "He's perfect, Emily. You did that. You raised an amazing kid. We're not doing this," Emily said firmly, even as her heart softened slightly at his words. "We're not going to fall into some romanticized version of what this is. You have a complicated life, I have a simple one, and Noah is caught in the middle. Then help me figure out how to navigate it," Michael said. "I don't want to disrupt his life or yours. I just want to be his father, however that looks." Emily studied his face, searching for any sign of deception or ulterior motive, but all she saw was sincerity and a desperate hope that made him look younger, more vulnerable. "We take it slow," she finally said. "Short visits. We figure out boundaries, and the first sign that your world is going to touch his, this ends. Understood?" "Understood." Michael pulled out his phone. "Can I have your number? The real one this time?" Emily rattled it off, and his phone buzzed a moment later with a text. "So I have yours too. Call before you come over," Emily said. "No surprises." "Fair enough." Michael lingered at the door, clearly reluctant to leave. "Emily, I know this is complicated, and I know you have every reason not to trust me, but I meant what I said last night. The debt is forgiven. You don't owe me anything, and whatever happens between us going forward, it's about Noah. Only Noah." After he left, Emily closed the door and leaned against it, exhausted. Through the wall, she could hear Noah humming as he worked on his homework, and she recognized the tune, some song from his favorite cartoon. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Vincent reporting. "Boss left the apartment 10 minutes ago. He's different. Never seen him like this." "What happened in there?" Emily frowned, then realized it must be Michael's associate from last night. She deleted the message without responding, unnerved by the idea that they'd been watched. Another text came through, this time from Michael. "I know Vincent texted you. I told him to stand down. No one's watching your place. You have my word." "Why was he watching in the first place?" Emily typed back. "Standard procedure. But that ends now. You and Noah are off limits to everyone in my organization. I've made that clear." Emily didn't respond. She didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to feel about the idea that Michael had enough power to simply declare them off limits to what sounded like a significant operation. She walked back to Noah's room and found him staring at his math worksheet without really seeing it. "You okay, sweetheart?" She sat on the edge of his bed. Noah looked up at her, his expression serious. "Is he going to go away again?" The question gutted her. "I don't think so, baby. I think he wants to stay in your life. Do you want him to?" Emily was caught off guard by the question. "It's not about what I want. It's about what's best for you." "But do you like him?" Noah pressed. "Are you friends?" Emily struggled to find the right words. "We're figuring it out. We used to know each other, but that was a long time ago. Now we have to learn about each other all over again." Noah seemed to accept this, returning his attention to his worksheet. But then, without looking up, he said quietly, "I'm glad he came back, Mommy." Emily kissed the top of his head, not trusting her voice to respond. That night, after Noah was asleep, Emily stood in her kitchen making tea and trying to process everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. Her phone buzzed with another text from Michael. "Is he asleep?" "Yes." "Why?" "I've been sitting in my car for the past hour trying to figure out what to say to you." Emily looked out the window and, sure enough, spotted a dark sedan parked across the street. She sighed. "You could have just called." "Would you have answered?" "Probably not," Emily admitted to herself. Her phone rang a moment later. She hesitated, then answered. "Hi." Michael's voice was quiet, tired. "You really need to stop lurking outside my apartment," Emily said, but there was no real heat in her words. "I know. I couldn't leave. I kept thinking about him in there, about how I almost missed all of this, how I could have gone my whole life never knowing I had a son. Michael, I'm not trying to guilt you. I'm just trying to understand how to feel about everything. I'm angry, but I don't know who I'm angry at. I'm grateful, but I feel like I don't have the right to be. I'm terrified I'm going to mess this up, but I don't even know what this is yet." Emily sank into a chair, her tea forgotten. "Welcome to parenthood. That's pretty much how I've felt for 5 years straight." Michael's soft laugh came through the line. "You make it look easy. It's not even a little bit. But you figure it out as you go. You make mistakes and you learn from them. You do your best and hope it's enough." "How do I do this, Emily? How do I be a father to a kid who doesn't really know me, who has his own life, his own routines?" "You show up," Emily said simply. "Consistently. Reliably. That's what kids need more than anything. To know you're not going to disappear." There was a long pause. "I won't disappear, I promise you that. Don't promise me. Promise him. And then keep that promise." "I will." Another pause. "Emily? I know this doesn't change anything, and I know I don't have the right to ask, but do you regret it? That night?" Emily closed her eyes, remembering the girl she'd been at 21, hopeful, optimistic, ready to believe in fairy tale endings. "I can't regret something that gave me Noah, even with everything that came after, even with how hard it's been. I can't regret him. That's not what I asked." "I know." Emily opened her eyes, looking out at the sedan across the street. "No, I don't regret that night, but I can't live in the past either. We're different people now." "Yeah." Michael's voice was heavy with something Emily couldn't quite identify. "We are." They said goodnight shortly after, and Emily watched from the window as Michael's car finally pulled away from the curb. She finished her now cold tea and went to check on Noah one more time before bed. He was sleeping peacefully, his stuffed elephant tucked under one arm, his face relaxed and innocent. Emily brushed his dark hair back from his forehead and whispered, "I'm doing the right thing. I have to be doing the right thing." But as she lay in her own bed later, staring at the ceiling, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change in ways she couldn't predict or control. Her phone lit up with one final text from Michael. "Thank you for today. For him. For everything. Sleep well, Emily." She typed and deleted several responses before finally settling on, "Good night, Michael." Outside, the city hummed with its usual nighttime energy. Somewhere in that city, Michael was returning to his life, the one Emily had kept Noah away from, the one that was now unavoidably connected to theirs. Tomorrow would bring more questions, more complications, more impossible choices. But tonight, Noah was safe. Noah was happy. Noah had finally met his father. And despite all her fears and doubts, Emily had to admit that seeing them together, seeing Noah's joy and Michael's careful tenderness, had touched something in her heart she'd thought she'd locked away 6 years ago. This was just the beginning, and Emily had no idea if that was a good thing or terrifying. Probably both. 3 days had passed since Michael first walked back into Emily's life, and their world had already shifted in ways she couldn't have imagined. True to his word, Michael called before each visit. Tuesday, he brought groceries. Expensive organic brands Emily could never afford. Wednesday evening, pizza and blocks with Noah. And now Thursday morning, Emily found herself coordinating schedules with her son's father like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I could come by around 7 tonight?" Michael's voice was hopeful over the phone as Emily made Noah's breakfast. "Maybe read him a bedtime story?" Emily watched Noah arrange his cereal into patterns. The domesticity of Michael's request still caught her off guard. "Okay, 7 o'clock. Was that Dad?" Noah asked the moment she hung up, his green eyes bright with anticipation. Dad. Not my dad or Michael. Just Dad, like it had always been that way. "Yes, sweetheart. He's coming tonight." Noah's face lit up with pure joy, and despite her reservations, Emily couldn't help but smile. Whatever else was happening, seeing her son this happy meant something. But as Emily walked Noah to school that morning, she noticed the same black SUV she'd seen yesterday, parked, watching. Her hand tightened on Noah's as unease crept up her spine. After dropping Noah off, she texted Michael, "There's a car watching our building, black SUV, has been for 2 days. His response was immediate. "I know. They're mine. Protection detail. You didn't think to mention you were having us watched? Can I call you?" She answered on the first ring. "What? Don't be angry. You're having us followed, Michael. How am I supposed to not be angry?" "Protected," he corrected firmly. "There's a difference. 4 days ago, people in my world found out I have a son. In my world, Emily, that information is dangerous." The blunt statement sent ice through her veins. "What does that mean?" "It means I have competitors. People who would love to find a weakness to exploit. And Noah," his voice roughened, "Noah is the biggest weakness I've ever had." Emily sank against her car. "Are we in danger?" "Not with my people watching. That's the point. Just give me a few weeks to send the right messages. Once everyone understands you and Noah are completely off limits, the threat level drops significantly." "This is insane," Emily whispered. "I know, and I'm sorry, but we can't change what is. We can only deal with it." Emily wanted to argue more, but what could she say? She didn't understand his world or its rules. "If we're ever actually in danger because of you, you walk away, completely. Noah's safety comes first. Always." The silence was heavy. "I can't promise that." "Then this ends." "Walking away wouldn't make you safer," Michael interrupted. "The connection exists now. People know. Me disappearing would make things worse because I couldn't protect you." Emily closed her eyes, feeling trapped. "I hate this." "I know. I hate it too. I'm still coming at 7, right?" "Yes, but we need to talk. Really talk. Tonight. After Noah's asleep. I promise." That evening, Michael arrived with a dinosaur model set that made Noah's eyes go wide. Emily watched them build it together on the living room floor, their dark heads bent close, both concentrating with identical expressions of focus. The scene was so normal, so domestic, it made her chest ache. At bedtime, Michael read Noah his spacebook, his deep voice gentle and soothing. "Do you think there are aliens, Dad?" Noah asked drowsily. "The universe is pretty big. Seems lonely if we're the only ones in it." By the time the book ended, Noah was fighting sleep. "Will you come back tomorrow?" "If it's okay with your mom, yes. Absolutely." "Promise?" Emily saw Michael's throat work. "I promise." After Noah fell asleep, Michael looked emotionally exhausted. "I never let myself think about having kids. It seemed irresponsible given my life, but now, Emily, I can't imagine my life without him." They moved to the kitchen for tea, and Emily said quietly, "I need the truth about what we're dealing with. All of it." Michael was quiet for a long moment. "My family has been in complicated business for 3 generations. I inherited it 5 years ago. I have competitive business relationships, sometimes aggressively so. People in my position don't always play by traditional rules." "Are you in danger?" "I'm careful, but yes, there's always some level of risk. And now we are too. You're under my protection, which means you're off limits. But there's an adjustment period when news spreads. People test boundaries." Michael leaned forward. "I'm restructuring, moving toward legitimate operations. It won't happen overnight, but I'm building something different. For him." "Trying isn't the same as doing," Emily said sharply. "I want you to fix this. I want Noah to have a father without being a target. I'm working on it. Work faster. Because every day that SUV is outside is a day I regret letting you into our lives." The harsh words hung between them. Michael's jaw tightened, then he nodded slowly. Fair enough. The next morning brought rain and dread. As Emily drove Noah to kindergarten, she saw the black SUV across the street. Protection, she reminded herself, not surveillance. But minutes after dropping Noah off, her phone buzzed with a text from the school. Noah's grandmother is here for early pickup. Please confirm authorization. Emily's blood ran cold. Noah didn't have a grandmother who would pick him up. Her hands shaking, she called the school. This is Emily Carter. I got a message about a pickup. Yes, a woman claiming to be Noah's grandmother says there's a family emergency. Don't let her take him, Emily said, panic sharp in her voice. I'm on my way. Do not let anyone leave with my son. She ran to her car, hands trembling on the wheel. The 10-minute drive felt like hours. When she burst into the office, the principal stood with a well-dressed older woman Emily had never seen. Where's Noah? Emily demanded. He's safe in his classroom, the principal assured her. We followed protocol. But this woman was very insistent. Emily turned to the stranger. Who are you? The woman's smile was cold. Just someone delivering a message. Your son is adorable, by the way. Such striking eyes. The threat was clear. Emily couldn't breathe. Get out, now. No need for hostility. The woman's smile widened. But you should tell Michael Donovan that not everyone is afraid of him. And sometimes the best way to hurt someone is through the things they love most. She walked out calmly, leaving Emily trembling. Emily collected Noah and immediately called Michael. Someone tried to take Noah from school. Are you both safe? His voice was sharp, controlled fury underneath. We're in the car. Where were your people? Emily, listen to me. Vincent will be there in 3 minutes. He's driving you to my place. It's secure. No one can get to you there. Michael, Emily. His voice was steel. Someone's testing me. I need to handle this today. But I can't do that if I'm worried about you and Noah. Please. Emily looked at Noah in the mirror, singing softly, unaware of danger. Okay. Vincent arrived in an armored SUV. They drove through downtown to Beacon Hill, pulling into the driveway of a pristine brick townhouse. Inside, the house was beautiful. Hardwood floors, expensive furniture, artwork. This was real wealth, and it made Emily acutely aware of their different worlds. Mr. Donovan will be here within the hour, Vincent said before leaving. Mommy, this house is huge. Noah's eyes were wide. Does Dad live here? Apparently, Emily murmured. Michael arrived soon after, his expression tight with controlled anger. I'm handling this. The people responsible will understand what happens when they threaten my family. Your family, Emily repeated. Is that what we are? Yes. No hesitation. And I protect my family. By doing what exactly? Whatever is necessary. You don't need the details. Maybe I do. Dad? Noah ran into the room. Your house is so cool. Can I see the yard? Michael's expression immediately softened. Sure, buddy. Outside in the small garden, Emily asked quietly. How long do we stay here? Until it's safe. A few days, maybe a week. I have work. Noah has school. I'll arrange everything. This isn't negotiable, Emily. She wanted to argue, but looking at Noah running carefree through the garden, she couldn't. I need our things. Already done. Vincent's team packed bags. Everything will be here soon. You went into my apartment without permission? I did what needed to be done. Michael's tone was final. You can be angry later. Right now, my priority is keeping you both alive. The blunt words chilled her. Is it really that serious? Yes. He finally looked at her, genuine fear in his eyes. They came to his school, Emily. If I don't respond with force, they'll try again. And next time they might succeed. Emily sat down, legs weak. I'm sorry. I never wanted this. But you can't change it, Emily said. None of us can. I'm going to fix this, Michael promised. Whatever it takes. That evening felt surreal. Cooking dinner together in Michael's kitchen, eating at his table while Noah chattered happily about the big house, unaware of why they were really there. After Noah's bath and bedtime story, Emily found herself exhausted. You can take the master bedroom, Michael said. I'll sleep on the couch. This is your house, and you're my guest. As Emily headed upstairs, she paused. How did they even know about Noah? Michael's expression darkened. Information leaks. Always. The moment I acknowledged you as mine, we became visible. So this is our reality now? Looking over our shoulders forever? No, just for a few weeks while I set boundaries. Then it gets better. I promise. Emily wanted to believe him. But as she lay in his bed that night listening to rain against windows, she couldn't shake the feeling that nothing would ever really be safe again. Down the hall, Noah slept peacefully, unaware, and somewhere in the house, Michael sat awake, making calls, doing whatever he did to protect them. Emily closed her eyes and tried not to think about what setting boundaries actually meant. Some things she was learning, it was better not to know. 5 days in Michael's townhouse had blurred into a strange new normal. Emily woke each morning in his guest room, made breakfast in his kitchen, and watched Noah explore every corner of the house with endless curiosity. It was domestic and unsettling all at once, playing house in a fortress. Michael came and went at odd hours, his face growing more tired each day, the weight of whatever he was handling evident in the tension around his eyes. But when he was with Noah, that exhaustion melted away, replaced by something softer, something that looked almost like peace. It was Wednesday evening when Michael finally sat Emily down after Noah had gone to sleep. "It's done," he said quietly, his voice heavy with relief and something else, maybe regret. "The situation is handled. The message has been sent and received. You and Noah can go home." Emily studied his face in the dim lamplight. "What did you do?" "What I had to." Michael met her eyes. "The people who threaten Noah understand now that there are consequences. Real consequences. They won't come near you again. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you." Michael leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Emily, there are parts of my life I can't share. Not because I don't trust you, but because knowing certain things would put you at risk. Please understand that." Emily wrapped her arms around herself. "I don't know if I can live like this. Always wondering, always half knowing. I know, that's why I'm making changes." Michael pulled out a folder from his briefcase and set it on the coffee table between them. "I've been restructuring my operations, moving assets into legitimate businesses, real estate development, investment firms, consulting. It's going to take time, but I'm building an exit strategy." Emily opened the folder, scanning documents she barely understood. Incorporation papers, business licenses, financial projections. "This is real?" "It's real. I can't erase my past, but I can build a different future. For Noah. For us, if..." He stopped, seeming uncertain for the first time. "If there is an us." "I don't know what we are," Emily admitted. "Co-parents? Former lovers? Strangers who share a child? Maybe we could be more." Michael's voice was tentative, vulnerable in a way she'd never heard. "If you'd give me a chance to show you who I really am. Not the person who walked through your door demanding money, but the man who wants to be a good father, who wants to be someone worthy of you both." Emily's throat tightened with emotion. "Michael, I can't make that decision right now. Everything's happened so fast." "I know. I'm not asking for an answer tonight. I'm just asking you to consider the possibility." They sat in silence for a moment, the grandfather clock in the corner ticking steadily. Finally, Emily said, "We should go home tomorrow. Noah needs routine. He needs his own space." Michael nodded, though she could see the disappointment in his eyes. "I'll have Vincent drive you in the morning, and Emily, the protection detail stays, just for a few more weeks until I'm certain everything's stable." "Okay." It was easier to agree than to fight, and truthfully, Emily felt safer knowing someone was watching. The next morning, Noah was disappointed to leave the big house, but his spirits lifted when Michael promised to visit that evening. The drive back to their apartment felt surreal, like returning from a strange vacation to a reality that didn't quite fit anymore. Inside their modest 2-bedroom, everything looked exactly as they'd left it, yet somehow different, smaller, more vulnerable. Emily found herself checking the locks twice, looking out the windows, hyper-aware of every sound. That evening, Michael arrived with Chinese takeout and a smile for Noah that transformed his entire face. They ate dinner together at Emily's small kitchen table, and it felt more natural than it had any right to. After Noah's bath, Michael read him a bedtime story, and Emily listened from the hallway to their quiet conversation. "Dad?" Noah's sleepy voice drifted out. "Are you staying?" "Not tonight, buddy, but I'll be back tomorrow." "Do you promise?" "Really promise?" "I promise I'm not going anywhere, Noah. You're stuck with me." Noah giggled. "Good. I like being stuck with you." When Michael emerged, his eyes were suspiciously bright. Emily pretended not to notice as they moved to the living room. "He's amazing," Michael said, his voice rough. "Every single day with him, I discover something new. The way his mind works, his questions, his kindness. Emily, you've done an incredible job raising him." "We're doing it together now," Emily said, and surprised herself by meaning it. Over the following weeks, a new rhythm emerged. Michael came for dinner 3 nights a week, took Noah to the park on Saturdays and called every evening to say goodnight. He was present, consistent, exactly what Noah needed. And slowly, carefully, Emily found herself lowering her guard. She watched Michael teach Noah to ride a bike in the park, running beside him with endless patience. She saw him attend Noah's school presentation on dinosaurs, sitting in a tiny chair with the other parents, beaming with pride. She noticed how he remembered Noah's favorite foods, how he never broke a promise, how he was building trust one moment at a time. But it was a random Tuesday evening that changed everything. Emily was cooking dinner when Noah ran into the kitchen, his face streaked with tears. "Mommy, I fell." Before Emily could react, Michael was there, kneeling beside Noah, examining his scraped knee with gentle hands. "Hey, buddy. You're okay. It's just a little scratch. You're so brave." "It hurts," Noah whimpered. "I know. But you know what? Every scar tells a story about something you survived. This one will remind you that you learned to do a really cool trick on your bike." Michael looked up at Emily. "First aid kit?" They worked together, Emily getting supplies while Michael distracted Noah with silly stories, both of them cleaning and bandaging the scrape while Noah gradually calmed down. "There." Michael placed the last bandage. "Good as new? Maybe even better." Noah threw his arms around Michael's neck. "Thanks, Dad. I love you." Michael froze, his eyes flying to Emily's. She saw the shock, the overwhelming emotion, the question. Did he really just say that? "I love you too, buddy," Michael said, his voice breaking. "So much." That night, after Noah was asleep and Michael was preparing to leave, Emily stopped him at the door. "He meant it," she said softly. "When he said he loves you, he really meant it." "I know." Michael's hand gripped the door frame. "Emily, I never expected, I didn't think I could feel like this. Like my heart might actually break from how much I love that kid." "That's parenthood," Emily said with a small smile. "It's terrifying and beautiful, and it changes everything." Michael looked at her then, really looked at her, and something shifted between them. "Emily, Stay," she interrupted, the word out before she could second guess it. "Just for coffee. We should talk." They sat at her kitchen table, the same table where this had all begun weeks ago, but everything was different now. "I've been thinking," Emily started, her hands wrapped around her mug, "about what you said, about the possibility of more." Michael went very still. And I'm scared. I'm scared of your world, of the danger, of Noah getting hurt. But I'm also scared of denying him a father who clearly loves him, of denying myself." She stopped, gathering courage, "of denying myself the chance to see where this could go." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe we try. Slowly, carefully. We figure out what this is. Co-parents, friends, maybe eventually something more. But we do it for the right reasons. Not because we're forced together by circumstances." Michael's smile was like sunrise. "I can do slow. I can do careful. Emily, I'll do whatever it takes. No more secrets about the big things," Emily said firmly. "No more unilateral decisions about our safety. We're partners in this, or we're nothing." "Partners," Michael agreed. "I promise." They talked for hours that night, about his business transitions, about her dreams of eventually starting her own event company, about what they wanted for Noah's future. It wasn't a declaration of love or a commitment to romance, but it was something real, something built on honesty and hope. 6 months later, the late spring sunshine warmed the backyard of Michael's townhouse as Emily arranged food on the outdoor table. It was Noah's 6th birthday, and the garden was decorated with dinosaur balloons and streamers. "Mommy, Dad says I can open presents soon." Noah ran up, his face flushed with excitement. "After cake, mister," Emily laughed. "Go play with your friends." She watched him run back to the group of kindergarten classmates playing games, and felt Michael's arms wrap around her waist from behind. "Happy?" he murmured against her ear. "Very." Emily leaned back against his chest, marveling at how natural this felt now. "Who knew 6 months ago that this would be our life? I had hope." Michael turned her to face him. "Emily, I know we're taking things slow, but I need you to know something. This, us, Noah, this family we're building, it's everything to me. You're everything to me." Emily's heart swelled. "You're pretty important to me too, Michael Donovan." They hadn't labeled what they were yet. More than co-parents, definitely more than friends, but taking their time before jumping into anything official. They'd had dinner dates, long conversations, stolen moments, but always with Noah as their priority. "Kids, cake time," Emily called out. As they gathered around the table, Noah between them, surrounded by friends and laughter and joy, Emily looked at Michael across the candles and saw her future. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't without complications. His business transitions were ongoing and there were still moments of stress and worry. But it was real. It was theirs. Noah blew out his candles, and Michael's hand found Emily's under the table, squeezing gently. "What did you wish for?" someone asked Noah. Noah grinned, looking between his parents. "That we could be together like this always. All three of us." Emily's eyes met Michael's, and she saw her own emotions reflected there. Love, gratitude, hope. "I think that wish might just come true," Michael said softly. Later, as the party wound down and Noah played with his new dinosaur toys, Michael and Emily stood in the kitchen cleaning up together. "I have something for you," Michael said, pulling a small envelope from his pocket. "It's not much, but inside was a key." Emily looked up at him, questioning. "To this house," Michael explained. "I know you love your apartment and I'm not asking you to move in, but I want you to have this. So you know you always have a place here. Both of you, this is your home too, whenever you want it." Emily's throat tightened with emotion. "Michael, no pressure," he said quickly. "Just possibility." She looked at the key, then at Noah playing in the other room, then at Michael, this man who'd walked into her life demanding money and instead found something infinitely more valuable. "Possibility," she repeated, slipping the key into her pocket. "I like the sound of that." Michael pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "We're going to make this work, Emily, all of it, I promise." And watching Noah run to them, wrapping his arms around both their legs and declaring it the best birthday ever, Emily believed him. Their story hadn't started perfectly. It was messy and complicated and sometimes scary, but they were writing a new ending together, one filled with second chances, redemption, and a family built on choice rather than obligation. It was enough, more than enough, it was everything.